week on air and online at npr.org/climateweek.
Support for NPR's Climate Solutions Week, Rethinking Home, comes from the Nature Conservancy, committed to the belief that nature is common ground for everyone, and that protecting nature is vital to solve.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Russ Murley with your WT. Partly cloudy, isolated showers, upper 70s tonight. It'll be partly sunny with isolated showers, 88 to 92 tomorrow. A few clouds, upper 70s tomorrow night, and lots of sunshine Saturday, 88 to 92. Rip current risk will be moderate at most area beaches today. And we are experiencing a Sahara dust event for the next few days as well. Uncover the story of St. John Street, a black neighborhood in Flint, Michigan, erased by urban renewal. Coming up tonight at 8 p.m. on WTJX-TV, Channel 12.
WTJX 93.1, Charlotte, Amalia, your NPR station in the Virgin Islands.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
And good Thursday morning, and it's good to be back in the saddle. Welcome to another edition of Analyze This here on your NPR, like they say up in the Bronx, station. With yours truly, Neville James on 93.1 FM. Right into the fire. Check this out, right? I thought I had like a little, 5 minutes to work with, but they said no, right? The man is here. I got the governor in the house. He's on the chair, the psychiatrist move is in full effect. Good morning to the ninth governor.
Good morning, Virgin Islands. It's always great to. I look forward to our conversations.
Yeah,
right?
man.
When I thought I was thinking about it all week long, I'm like, man, I'm so tired of discussing this race nonsense and all this other stuff. So much other things.
We're gonna have some fun with that in the second segment, right? No, I just want to ask because I was, I do the mental thing before the show. How you doing?
I am well, man. I really spend time paying attention. I was telling a good friend of mine the other day, I ain't gonna call her out, Rosie, that you're getting older.
Yes,
like your mind thinks your body is 35, but you're not 35.
That's right.
And I remember when I used to like white people to stretch. Like, what's that stretching stuff about? You go and play ball, you just jump on the court. You can't.
No, we know why.
White people will go. Why can't eat meat late in the night? Last night they cooked some stew beef. It was so good. But it didn't finish till like 9:30, 10 o'clock. You got like boil a long time, right?
The body gonna talk to you about that.
Oh my God! This morning I wake up like I just eat the beef. So you gotta take care of yourself. And I like cycling and slow impact on the knees and stuff. So I try to get on my Peloton and do indoors because outdoors kind of difficult sometimes. And early in the morning, my schedule, St. Thomas, St. Croix, you never know where I'm gonna be, but. I think releasing them endorphins and really keeping yourself healthy, especially in this age, because so many people, that's the other thing, my son. So many of us are sick, and, we're losing some good people. I don't know if it's just that I'm getting older, but it just seemed like I could go to a funeral like every single day. I mean, in the last month, we've lost so many people in this community. And then, you add to that, the unfortunate incidents like murders, people like Dottie, who, I thought he would be in the Virgin Islands for a long time to come. Every time I see him, he would harass me.
There was an arrest made for that, right?
Yeah, we already arrested someone for that. We got some more arrests today. The police commissioner and his team is coming on today. They got press conference talking about stuff. So, you know, we I was just told of an incident, in a homicide. Seems like somebody got in a car accident, came out of the car and shot the other person. Yeah,
You serious?
Yeah, I think people's
We had
level
a
of,
road rage homicide for real?
yeah, this morning in St. Thomas,
Jeez,
unfortunately.
right?
So, yeah, people are really on like 9, and I get it, right? I mean, I think part of it is, in America, this whole system is designed to make you always want more, and it has to, because it's like one big Ponzi scheme. Conspicuously consume, buy more, get more, want more all the time. And what it does is it creates a real high frustration level for people in the community, first of all. Then you listening to news from all over the place and all these things bombarding you and bad things. And then you're seeing all these people on social media doing so well. You want to know why your life is so hard. Mm-hmm. And I was watching last night, right? And I laughed. And I think, as somebody tell me, Neville, we the new old people.
That's true.
We need to start to tell our stories. We take them for granted. Because I saw a story, I was watching TikTok last night, and they had a reel of St. Thomas in the 70s, and it's obviously a young person saying, "Oh, I wish I was there in the Virgin Islands in this beautiful time." I started to laugh. I said, "You wish you were in a time a standpipe and 5-gallon bucket, woman walking up the street with thing on the head. No TV in your house,
no.
2 channel on the TV, yes,
okay?
No,
A-track.
no internet. Water starting off and this thing.
Because it was pure, that's why they want that.
Yeah,
it ain't pure no more.
Garbage pan and fire.
The purity
house
gone.
burning down because the propane leaking all night. And remember when oven used to blow up? People used to blow up in the house because the gas leaks
yes,
and stuff.
Not only that, but the best part about that time, I don't brag about it in the show, is going outside to turn the antenna.
Going on 10-year-old
right,
kids.
That's a stop. Come back a little bit.
10-year-old children on the roof in the middle of the night with their parents giving directions.
Aku, WAPA, WBNB, WSVI. We had 4 channels.
We didn't even have
2 here and
English
2
channel. Ay, mamanye. In Puerto Rico, que vamos café. Hey, listen, you wish you were back in that time when you used to get one toy for Christmas.
I could take a month of that every so often. That would be good. The next question, I want to make sure you go. Next question, how the country running? Because the country running good is the prime answer that we want to hear. But we know you just mentioned a number of things that we're dealing with, challenges and all that stuff.
We always got challenges, man. But I think the problem, and I do too. I look at the challenges instead of the accomplishments, and like how far we've come and the things that we've been able to accomplish under amazing stressors. I mean, you got to think there's not a lot of communities that have been totally devastated 3 times in 30 years, wiped out the entire electrical power grid system, rebuilt 3 times.
Technically 4 times in 36 years.
Okay. I was being nice.
Yeah.
Plus other
Maryland and the 2 big ones.
Yeah. But we had other little ones, and then we don't take into account that we lost the largest. Like, people don't recover, towns don't recover from losing 10% of your employment directly. It includes the closure of Hess. 53 cents per kilowatt light bills in 2007 and 8. Pay cuts, insolvency, you name it. It's like we've been through so much, and yet we here in the Virgin Islands now, we've never had, finding people to work has never been a problem in my 57 years. And we're in a situation where we can't find enough people to work.
In the last 6.5.
Yeah. We unemployment below 4%. Never, ever. I forget, people don't remember when Charles Howard was a place, and New Hansen Memorial were the hospitals. When you're going there, smell like antiseptic. People used to say that's a place you go to die. I think we forget the hurricanes and 89 and the modular center, what we had there. I think we forget the little airport we had in St. Thomas where the plane run through.
Wow.
American Airlines. I mean, the plane air them crashing into the mountains. You know, I think we forget the split session schools, the highest teenage pregnancy rate in the country. I mean, we invented social promotion in the 70s because we had 16-year-olds in 7th grade, and they just promoted them out to 8th and 9th grade. 38% illiteracy rate, 38% of the people not graduating from high school. We've overcome some tremendous, it's like WAPA has been a problem, garbage. We used I could still see the garbage bins on fire down my building 13. They used to burn the garbage because they used to stay there so long because nobody was picking it up. Potholes in the road. You know, I could go on and on. But we're in an age now where there is opportunity if you want opportunities. Free college tuition, you know. I think we've come a long way with our Medicaid. We now have stable Medicaid. Like, people don't think about that. The earned income tax credit rebate has allowed us to catch up on tax returns. And the greatest thing of all, I think, today, where the retirement system would have been gone, we pay back the 8%. We paid $60 million towards retro wages.
You know, I'm glad you went there with that one day. God was driving on it down at me. I said, you know, the biggest beneficiary of paying retro is the government of the Virgin Islands.
Absolutely. With a benefit too. We got a cool $5-6 million when we paid it though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Right off the bat, 28% going back to the government of the Virgin Islands.
But
so,
you know
so
what?
whatever the dollar figure, every $10 million in retro, $2.8 million off the top, and then you got the other in-kind contributions and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
but
you know, there are those who say, you know, paying the retro. And also, we didn't need to do that and all that stuff, which may be true, but it's still an obligation.
Who says that?
He said, no, trust me, you got people out there, you know, who have said you need to pay the retro. You got other thing that more priority and all that stuff, right? But when I do the math, you know, I'm like, now I see why paying the retro ain't just about satisfying an outstanding obligation. The government will benefit as well.
But you know, when, like, I think, and I blow up Kenny Gittins and on in our Democratic chat because, you know, the people, we live so long under crisis that crisis is our political tool now. And to make people feel like we always in crisis, like, Neville, when in the history of the Virgin Islands, you know, the Virgin Islands government could have 138 million sitting in the bank. Cash.
2006, when I took over with the Young in 2007.
But you know,
Bonnie them had done a good job. The last part of Turnbull, and that was really because when were you working at Hovensa? Around then? No. You were already at Innovative then, yeah. Right? But you did a stint in Hovensa, right?
Yeah. Well, that's my first work.
And they started paying corporate taxes in September 2005, thereabout. And because of that, you know, the government was doing real well. But which shows that if you do things right and you put certain things in place, governments can function and ever so often see a surplus.
But check here. With dollar money they say they had, we still were carrying $27 million in debt to WAPA. They didn't pay the bill off. I mean, we still had the retro pay. They had so much money, right? They didn't pay a dime of retro. And you know what the other thing is? When and what governor could say that they left the Virgin Islands government with less debt than when it came in? Never, ever happened.
Well, the world is a
no.
a debt functioning world now, you know.
Thank you.
You're in debt in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm not a big Trump fan, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, part of the bill, this big, beautiful bill, includes raising the debt ceiling. Of course, he has his conservatives we got problem with, and we'll see how that one pans out. But, you know, this notion that debt, you know, as it relates to jurisdictions, you know, is the worst thing. It's not a good thing, but it's actually a way where every jurisdiction has some sort of significant debt.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, but you have a legislator, our good friends in the legislature, that mislead the people and make them think like it's a bad thing. It's like, we were able to save the GRS and actually be less in debt. And I tell people all the time because
you're not going to defend the first branch, right? So
yeah, I know. That's why I said it. I bait in your man. I know you're going to bite.
You're not going to defend the first branch. So I just want to go. We're going to have some fun down the road with that.
We gave up.
I yield.
We gave up $40 million that used to come into the general fund every year from the rum cover over revenues and give it to the retirement system, $40 million. So when people talk about, the government in such financial duress, that's $40 million of road paving every year, We don't only put $5 million in the budget for road. Think about that. That's $40 million for vendors, $40 million for school repairs, $40 million that a hospital could have been getting. I mean, so we're paying everything. We're not leaving anything unpaid. And that's the reason why it may seem that we're under financial stress, but we're actually trying to do the right thing. And at the same time, we were still able to create a rainy day fund. $20 million we had in it this year. We're putting in another $5 million.
There's one thing I want to ask you, that since we're talking about it, because you are the chief executive of the Virgin Islands. You're the titular head of the Democratic Party. And I got a lot of questions to ask. I'll make sure I ask them. Why is there a confrontational relationship between you and the Democratic Legislature of the Virgin Islands right now? I mean,
you want me to say, wrap it to you? Hate is gonna hate. People don't like losing.
Wouldn't you want, unlike some of your predecessors, that by the time January 2027 roll around, you could say, I have addressed the discord, the political discord among our party, which, as we speak right now, is virtually the only party when you look at the numbers and registration in the Virgin Islands.
I'm going to call a name today, right? So I met with the Democratic Party after the last year. I think it was before the election. And I said, this is what we need to do. We need to make sure that the Democratic nominations can only be nominated by card-carrying, dues-paying Democrats, not general primary elections. So if you want to be on the Democratic ticket, you have to be nominated by somebody from the territorial committee or the district committee, and then you have to be voted upon within the Democratic Party. Not everybody who registered Democrat, the people who pay dues. So people like Court Vialet, who is leading the charge against the Democratic governor and could never run under the Democratic banner again. People like Kenny Gittins, who took the symbol off of the ballot from the Democratic Party, could never again run under the Democratic ballot. So how it is, everywhere in America, and we don't get any credit in the Virgin Islands. Everywhere in America, people lining up Republican, Democrat. This is the only place in the world where you have 12 sitting Democrats in a legislature siding with, imagine the bill to rescind the governor's raise was put out by Alma Francis Heiliger, an independent.
That's how it's supposed to be, though.
But it was supported unanimously by every Democrat except Carla, Senator Joseph.
She was absent.
Right.
Yeah.
But she would have probably voted too. Mm-hmm. So them people would have been highly sanctioned in the next election. So the reason why...
So then let me ask this question. Let me ask this based on what you're saying then. Is party politics dead in the Virgin Islands?
It is dead. I mean, the symbol is... You know what we need? I thought about this last night. You know what we need? What is missing from the Virgin Islands? A strong Republican party.
I agree with that. But it don't have to be Republican. Strong opposition party.
Yeah.
Right? Remember now, you're number 9, right? When number 1 was elected and number 2 and number 3, we had a strong Republican Party, a strong ICM party. The Democratic Party was still numerically dominant, but those parties gave alternative agendas that allowed for people to say, no, we don't have to go with the establishment, the numerical establishment.
But I think it's more than that, right? We need people who think ideologically, think different. All these people we have in the legislature now, their ideology is the same.
You got 12 Democrats and they're rough. 80%.
All 15 of them have the same ideology.
We'll take a break. The conversation gets sweet.
That's why I like talking to you. It goes to another
You're
level.
time restraint. When we come back, we're going to touch on that big issue immediately, which is this race thing that started back in the latter part of last year and was addressed last week, Wednesday. We'll be back right after this. The governor's in the house. And we're back here and analyze this. I got the governor in the house, my phone blowing up with text messages left and right. You know it is, governor, when you come in the house. So here's the deal, right? Let's get right to it, right?
Wait, no, man, let me finish this ideological conversation.
Okay. I'm going to yield.
You know, because I just want to finish it out because, you know, at least the Democrats and the Republicans having a fight about, you know, social aids, debt. Like we're not having those fights. You know, we don't have those fights in the Virginia. We're having power fights. This is about who is in charge and who lose the last election and how they could get back.
Yeah, but you know something? I'm glad you went there. Let me go back to 2018 then. When you were running, you come from out of nowhere.
When he was like, who he big? Where he going?
You come from out of nowhere in May and June, and by August, you're running away with the primary. And then you talk, you know, the winners talk. Let's all come together, kumbaya. And then by the next election cycle, which is the midterms of 2020, you have major differences with Democrats.
You know, it's not. They're not Democrats. That's the problem.
The breakdown happens too quickly.
You know, if you look at the 6.5 years that I've been in the legislature, I mean, in office. The legislature really hasn't come up with much substantive legislation. I could name them for you. I mean, you know, Donna, Fred Gregory had the school bill. This bull case with the tax on the currency moving back and forth between electronic transfers. That's it. Everything else been us. I can't think of another bill. Maybe the trailer tax. I mean, everything been us.
The free trade.
The free trade zone.
That's all true. That's good legislation.
I hate to break it to you, but we created that in the EDA and worked with Novella, and he forced election. That's how long we've been trying to get that done.
Actually, I had met with in Novelle's, in Senator Francis's first term. I had met with Jennifer Nugent-Hill and the leadership folk at Tropical back in February of 2016. So that was a long time, but that goes to show the amount of seed work you got to put in to make something happen.
Absolutely. Remember, I was a chair at the EDA, and I came out of the EDA. It wasn't my original idea. I mean, but that's how long in 2012 we've been trying to get that done. But I would give kudos to my good friend, Senator Novelle Francis. He did get that through. And I have a meeting today that is blowing up like you wouldn't believe. But, I mean, so if you don't have real legislation, and I used to argue with my former chief of staff, Carl Knight, who used to tell him, I ain't sending nothing to the legislature because it's just like, if you don't shoot, nobody can block your shot, right? And all it is like, in order to be appealing to the public, resistance is the only avenue because there are no real ideological differences. So in order to make it seem like you're doing something, you have to criticize or block.
But who is your elders? I mean, I know I consider myself a peer. Who is your elders that would allow for you to incorporate precedent in decision making? Like, for example, this pay raise thing, right? I called George Dudley and asked George Dudley, do you know about the pay raise with Farrelly and the senator then back in the day? And he said, yes, I was actually intricately involved in it. And he told me the whole thing. Have you incorporated, are there elders?
You mean this pay raise what we still paying for right now? The $201 million in retro? One?
No, I talk about the compensation deal. Because there was precedent there. And I want you to stick with me for this one. Attorney George Dudley told me he was there when the governor at the time, Alex Farrelly, and maybe it was because he was once a senator and also a judge, he was tired of commissioners going down to the legislature and there being acrimony between the board of directors, which is what the legislature is, because the government is a big business, right? Government's a big business. Right. So the board of directors, the legislature is the board of directors, and the management team who are running the company, which is the governor's commissioners, right? You're the CEO for the Virgin Islands. I just talking about it in business jargon. And he saw this and he said, no, something, all are you important, all are going to make the same amount of money. That's what it really boiled down to at that particular time. Of course, times changed, 6905. Change everything. Why is it that this particular issue mushroom into something that's out of control right now?
Coward. I mean, it's pure cowardice. I mean, like I can't equate it to anything else. I mean, it's pure cowardice.
But there was also some negligence, and I gonna show the negligence.
It wasn't to me. It wasn't really negligence because
I gonna tell you what negligence.
This is.
No. Let me educate the public. 2020, the summer of 2020, you send down the budget for fiscal year 2021. And I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. Did you not include in that budget for fiscal year 2021 a raise for the Sports Park and Recreation Commissioner, which would have impacted the Senate's salaries because he was at the time the lowest paid commissioner? Isn't that? I just want to make sure I get closer to the microphone. Let the public know.
That is correct. I forget that part.
So as a result of that, right? I'm going to talk to politics and be very candid. Coming out of the primary results, and that's why I want the public to follow me here. The governor sends this down the last part of May. Coming out of the primary results, we had some senators who knew of the raises all along.
Yes.
Right? And they decided, well, look, I got to do what I got to do because this is politics, right? And they say, senators know that we getting raises, and they ain't saying nothing.
Javon James. Javon. That's the part. Oh, man, Neville is so good. That's the part.
And as a result of that, Act 83, 84 amended Act 78, 78. Right? See, people don't like to follow the chronology, right? But that's why you analyze this, because you're going to get a chronology. So we have this legislation that amended 78, 78, And here's what happened. In that bill, there was a provision to
lower.
They did two things that I thought were significant.
Yes.
They reduced the review window from 180 days to 90 days. And they said the first report had to be submitted in May of 2022. However,
they did one more thing.
What they did?
They took the governor out of the equation. Because before, the bill said that you would go.
The law
said that after the legislative review, it would go straight to Government House to be signed or not signed. They took that out. They took out the governor piece, so it didn't have to go anywhere. So they made a conscious decision to take the governor out of the. I even forgot I signed that piece of legislation to take out of the equation. So once that happened, the whole thing was set in motion for this to happen. You know.
No. But here's one more thing I want to mention, though.
Because I want you as a neutral.
Yeah.
It absolves the executive branch of any responsibility for this action. Totally. The only thing you could blame on me is the 3 people I put on the board.
Correct. So, but here's, and I spoke with Senator Viale about this, right? And I want the record to know, right? If I don't know, right? The very first time I ran for office, when I had my campaign headquarters opening, my MC was Albert Bryan. And also, my childhood friend being there with me, and I called VLA. Okay, so I want that to know that I know them, good with them for 30, 40 years, 50 years. Let me get that out of the way.
And let me say, too, I good with God, too, but this politics.
Hey, but you know, politics could go. But here's the big problem, Governor. You mentioned crisis earlier. And you know what? That Act 83, 84, or 84, 83, whichever one it is, that's crisis legislation.
Yeah.
You know why? They put in that May 22 report deadline and didn't fund the commission until September of 2022.
Thank you.
That's a problem. I made that mistake one time as a senator, and I want the public to know I have no problem admitting I was wrong. Remember in 2017?
Don't go too far. I want you to say that again because people act like they had several attempts to change this bill, including when they funded it way after.
They forgot. And I know about forgetting because I was a victim of forgetting. Remember when you weren't in government at the time? In 2017 when we passed the sin tax?
Yes.
And we also passed the property tax and we delayed the property tax implementation?
Yes.
And it worked out to your political benefit because it was a cadet map thing. And we delayed it until the next year, not realizing property tax due in August of 2018, which is the bill them coming out in July, right before the primary, and man gets sent home, okay, to include myself, right? So I'm not saying the legislature would forgetting about funding the compensation commission. This was an isolated thing. It happens with all of us. I myself forgot about the chronology and all that stuff with respect to that property tax issue and how it impacts the politics. But here's the deal, Governor. How could we have a public compensation commission led by Halden Davies and he don't announce the findings of the compensation commission? He sent an email. That's negligence, man.
There's no requirement in the bill.
It doesn't have to be a requirement. If you are on a public compensation commission.
He was not commissioned by the public. He was commissioned by the legislature. He was commissioned.
The legislature is public, Governor?
He was not confirmed. He was appointed. I forget who picked Haldane was. I think it was the legislature, to the public commission, and it required him to turn it into. The law speaks to nothing about being transparent or because everybody knew. Nobody wanted to discuss
sound governance. Isn't that what we should be striving for?
Absolutely,
Governor?
But nobody wanted to discuss it. Never. No one.
I think you just crystallized
to discuss
everything.
This. No one.
Nobody wanted to discuss it.
Nobody. Who wanted to discuss it? Nobody wanted to discuss it.
And now we have what has been a 6-month controversy leading to session last week and all that stuff. You get a bill yet?
Yeah, it's there. We have bill review today.
Bill review today. Okay.
You know, I love the law.
You know it's veto proof the way they vote already.
Yeah, but the thing is I love that the legislature voted almost unanimously on this because it confirms that the bill and the law was enacted properly. They confirmed it when they voted unanimously to rescind it. Mm-hmm. They acknowledged that it is the law, which vindicates me of people. Oh, the governor give himself a raise. No, the legislature passed the law. Here's a rub, though. Mm-hmm. I don't think it is constitutionally possible to lower the salary of the governor, of a sitting governor, because if that were true, any legislature that didn't like the governor could just reduce his salary to $1. It's the same way, too. I was listening to them, and you can't say it's not a personal attack against Albert Bryan because maybe the most of the public didn't know. They have another bill that they were considering to reduce the retirement benefits of the governors and to cap the governor's salary. And you can't say it ain't personal and it's not vindictive and it's not like you lose. There's no one that is addressing the fact that, number one, the judiciary gets the same benefit level as me, right? Mm-hmm. But no one's talking about it. They make more than me, mm-hmm. the governor. No one's talking about it. No one's talking about the fact that they raise their salary themselves. No one's talking about it. So how can you not
the revised organic act allow for that?
No.
That's the VI code.
Yes. The legislature, no, the VI code don't allow for that. The legislature sets the salary of public officials.
So what allows for the judicial branch to determine their own salary?
Nothing.
Something has to.
But
they have to be guided by something.
I am just a big target. The governor, and I don't say. Let me stop saying I. The governor of Virgin Islands.
Well, Governor, I want to say this or no, because I was a victim of 6905, and they killed the senators for a $20,000 raise, but gave at the time Lieutenant Governor Greg Francis and Governor John DeYoung a pass for getting 50 and 70,000 raises respectively, which speaks to how the people look at the legislature. And
without a doubt.
And Halden Davies,
without a doubt,
right, perpetuated that by submitting a report with no raises for the Senate and raises for the governor. That's disrespect. You can't allow that, Governor. You shouldn't allow that from Halden Davies.
That's not technically true, but once again, the yellow streak cowards in the legislature, if you can't fight for yourself, who you can fight for, right?
But that's the reason why they create the commission to remove the legislature out of self-giving.
But do you know the legislature
and for him to come and for him to submit a report, a compensation report, and not include how important senators be in a unicameral legislature where we don't have municipal government. You yourself know that was a mistake on their part, the commission part.
I glad you say it. So
I heard the inside thing, I mean, I don't stay away from inside talk and analyze this. I actually big and MLA, but I heard that you asked a question. Oh, wait a minute. I got raises for me and the Lieutenant Governor. What about the Senate? This is back in December I'm talking about.
But you know what happened, right? You know what happened? Originally, let me tell this story because listen, this is how deep this is, right?
Yeah. And I don't want to probably think everyone from me, so that's why I'm talking about it in this second segment.
I remember when Avery was telling me he running for the legislature, and I say, Senator Lewis. Yeah. And I said, Avery, that's a serious pay cut you're going to take, And he said, yeah, but I really want to be a senator. I said, well, it ain't going to be that bad because the salary commission come out. I think I'm going to get a little bump. The legislature going to get a little bump. So when I finally signed, I was like, okay, it's 95. So you're only going to take a $15,000 pay cut. Mm-hmm. He take a $25,000 pay cut. So everybody thought, because if you look at the commission, I think we have it up on our website, the study, it actually says Senator 95,000. But if you read, it says the Senate President and the salary commission. No,
the Senate President, as he speaks right now, makes $95,000.
It also, let me show you how what it is again, right? It also says, which I think is a good provision, that every senator For every term they serve, they get a 1.5% increase, up to 6%.
There could be a counter argument with that with equal protection, though.
Right.
Because a voter could say, I don't vote for them based on how much terms they got. I vote on them to represent me for a term coming up.
But you know what?
That's a counter argument.
There's a counter argument. So if you, I like you to analyze this every which way. The equivalent of the $70,000 raise in Act 6905 would be if they gave $112,000 to me today.
Correct. You hear the music in the background. We're gonna enjoy this conversation. We got a couple of things I want to ask you about. Polly Joseph, WAPA and PSC, and the reciprocal tariffs and all that stuff with British Virgin Islands and all that stuff. We'll be back right after this with the Governor of the Virgin Islands, Albert Bryan. And we're back here, analyze this. The governor game, real into the details and all that stuff. And I'm a detailed type of person when it comes to legislation and all that stuff. So we go back to what you mentioned, right? There was a time when the Senate president made as much as the lieutenant governor, 75,000.
Yep.
At the time, the governor was making 80, senators were making 65. The way it's set up now with this recent thing, right? You making more than twice the Senate, well, not you, the governor of the Virgin Islands, which happens to be you, right? I don't want to make it silly, right? Making twice as much, and
it's wrong.
There's something fundamentally wrong with that.
No, but it's fun. There's something fundamentally
wrong with that.
But the one thing that I
from
think,
a percentage standpoint, I'm a percentage type of guy. Right?
So
the senators were making 77% of what the governor were making at 65 and 80. You can't now, right? If that's or either 75, something. You can't now have the governor making almost 2.5 times a senator. Something wrong with that.
But you know what's even more wrong with that? I think there is a pervasive belief in the government, in the public, that government employees ain't getting paid, and it's not true. When last you see the teacher them out, they protesting about their salary, or the police, or anybody else, they protest about conditions.
Yes.
You know, so they want more money. I'm never going to tell you they don't want more money, which
and they deserve it.
But anyway, the reality of it is that I just pick on our police chief in St. Thomas, Deborah Hodge, the first woman police chief in VI history, right? In 2024, she made more than $200,000. I could barely get her at 120. Like, thank you for your service, Chief Hodge, because The attorney general makes $144,000 a year. The closest unionized employee makes 138. When I run the numbers, I was number 144 on the pay list. So our pay there's an illusion that people aren't getting paid. People are getting paid. Now, granted, there's some very low paid people. I met a guy from education the other day and he was showing me his salary. I was like, how is that possible? And I called the commissioner of education and we fixed it. I'm signing stuff every single day for people because, and I do it purposely because if you don't push the bottom, then the top can't move, right? So how are you going to want to recruit engineers coming out of school and you ain't paying at least $75,000, $85,000 a year in order to remain competitive? So when you look at the $1.6 billion we spend annually, you know what? So what if we pay a senator $115,000? So
I've been there. I've been there for 12 years. Right. When I first got there, I was 65,000. Then it went to 85 after 6905. I once made 95 as a Senate President, 31st Legislature. I will always argue on behalf of the legislature. You cannot have the board of directors of the government of the Virgin Islands, the appropriating arm of government, making next to nothing. But that's bad.
I told it, like, I mean, when you look at perspective, right?
And then I'll say something else I want to say. You know, every 2 years, senators got a contract call. That's number one. And then number two, this is why people don't want to work in the first branch and they want to work in the executive branch because that's where the money is. But there is something, a history.
One more thing before you go. I want to say,
I want to touch on these other topics. Go ahead.
Consider Novell Francis.
Mm-hmm.
In 2008, when he was a commissioner of police under John DeYoung, he would make.
Well, a little bit later, like in 2010.
Yeah, that's when.
What the fella name? The fella, the Yankee fella?
Yeah, he was there before. It was like 9-10.
Yeah, 9-10, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He was making more money then as a commissioner. He was in the hundreds already. And he's making $85,000 today. I mean, like, how are you going to justify
a decade and a half later?
I mean, a union after union to come to me and tell me we ain't
but you know, it's actually the unions who actually disrupt and change salary structure in the government of the Virgin Islands. I don't know if you remember this, right? When you being in HES or Innovative, remember there was a time when we found out that principals, because they were in the EAA, and police captains, they had their union, they were making more than commissioners.
Yep.
That's why Turnbull and them had to change everything.
But it happened again.
And it's only right because you can't have a Department of Education commissioner who's in charge for the entire territory or a superintendent who's in charge for entire district making less than a principal. Something wrong with that.
But the superintendent, we have principals that make more than the superintendents now.
I mean, it's like from a responsibility standpoint, and not only that, they come from the pool of principals. So you are discouraging upward mobility, right? By saying, why would I want to leave being a principal in charge of 400 students, a staff of 60 or 80, making X dollars to be a superintendent in charge of an entire district, all these principals, and make less?
But most of the commissioners them now make more than the lieutenant governor, you know. Because we got, in order to attract a talent, assistant commissioner,
that's, you know something?
150.
I don't know if you realize it. We just justified the need for the compensation commission.
Of course you do. I mean, that's why it was created.
You know, I mean, man. So that's why we need to sit and not be acrimonious, not be confrontational, see things, look at things, set the structure so we don't have these public disputes.
But you know what happens? The legislature, in the name, like, it's like a hype. I'm going to pick on your people now. Like, one get up and say something, and the other one got to say something more. And they paint themselves into a corner, a very ridiculous corner, where they had to do something to make the public feel like they get pung of flesh.
James McCall.
The
show is the best.
Yeah,
man,
James McCall.
You know, they hook us up.
So now, Senator Maurice James was revising the Salary Commission to make sure that it was transparent, that they had posting dates, that the legislature had a mandatory a hearing on it, even if they don't act to make it more transparent as possible. That was the right thing to do.
Let me run through the rapid fire now because the question them been here waiting for you. And I know you say you got to get out of here. What's going on with Totola and the charter boat thing and all that stuff?
The VI Charter Commission, you know who the problem is? It's us. Our rates are too low in the Virgin Islands. You know, they made their point. They said people are sailing into our waters and charging $30,000 a sail, and we only getting $400 for the season.
When you say we, this is a joint thing with the
Tatola,
BVI
that's
and
what,
the Virgin Islands?
No. That's what BVI is saying.
Yeah.
And they're saying if we don't keep our prices like that on your people in the Virgin Islands, we're going to lose our entire charter fleet to the Virgin Islands, to U.S. Virgin Islands. And from my perspective, they don't have the support that we have. They don't have the resources that we have in terms of federal aid and all the other things. And they're right. I mean, you shouldn't be able to sail in and get in their waters and then sail back out and pay less. You need to pay. So our charter boat fees are like $400 for the year. Theirs were like $4,000 to carry to. Unlimited access is $24,000 to go into their waters for the full season. Is it a little bit much? Yeah, but we're talking about big time.
But when I spoke about it on the show, incremental application is better than that sudden move.
Absolutely,
because people can't afford these sudden increases. Man.
But they don't have
be realistic in that.
But they don't have $23 billion.
That's right.
They don't have the support to pave their roads, fix their schools, and do all the other things. So I respect them as a government, really independent, because the UK don't do much for them, trying to make things work for their economy.
But was the meeting productive though?
It was productive because they understood their position. I mean, we could tank them easily. We could take the whole charter yacht industry, but why? Them is our people. You know, they over there trying to run their thing. And I understand the VI Charter Association and why they upset is in turn. But we aren't raising. Our rates are like nothing that we pay in here.
WAPA and the PSC yesterday, big issues. What are you hearing out of that?
Crips and Bloods. Crips and Bloods.
About how we could fix that? Because
we got to repeal that 5 cents reduction. I tell the public, if we don't, like, WAPA's done. I mean, it's over. So we gotta get the PSC to hold it. I mean, the rate's gonna come down, but it can't come down now. WAPA just. You can't, we just stopped subsidizing WAPA. You can't now kick them in the, privates and put them back down on their knees again because it's the same money. The PSC is mad because WAPA, and I a little upset at Carl too because I told him this, you gotta play ball with them. WAPA doesn't want to pay the assessment fees. CEO night, yeah. So, we just had the same report that Mr. Senator Gittins requested from E&Y. You look at that report, I can make that report public so everybody could read it. It says if we don't keep the rates the same, WAPA is going to be sunk. Now, there's some other things happening. Tomorrow we're opening up Hoggensburg, which is our second solar site in St. Croix. The one in St. Thomas has started. So it's rolling along, but we got to keep the rates the same. There's never been a time in the Virgin Islands or a governor in the Virgin Islands who has been able to keep the rate the same for 6.5 years. Let me ask you. It's never happened before.
Never happened. Next question. Why you got your deputies in an acrimonious thing with the legislature?
They're not,
can't do that, Governor. Don't do that, man.
Senator Bulkis wrong. Senator Bulkis, no. He knew that Derek is on, Commissioner Gabriel is on vacation with his family. We told him that. And that's why he didn't appear. It wasn't purposeful, and then the media is making it seem.
But last week Monday, you tell them don't come when they had the committee.
Last year, that was pure nonsense. Because they know. Imagine the legislature was trying. They try and do it now. You can't pass a law. You can't say, okay, now fishing in lagoon is illegal, and everybody who fish in lagoon from January to now need to go to jail. You can't pass a law in the past. So the legislature is saying, anyone who implemented the law is illegal and is going to be implemented the salary raise is illegal and you have to pay it back because we're going back to January and making it illegal from January. Like, that is nonsense. And when you listen to people say nonsense, the Organic Act says that the legislature can't raise its salary, or give itself any benefit in the same term. It has to be, it's implied that you cannot injure and harm the governor's office, because it's like you got me hostage for the whole term, or the governor hostage. Like, anytime you make a move we don't like, we're going to reduce your salary to $1. I mean, it's like...
But this comes back to why you, as the chief executive of the Virgin Islands, you're carrying two big titles here.
Let me sit up on this.
You're the chief executive of the Virgin Islands. You are also the titular head of the only functioning party right now, or impactful party in the government of the Virgin Islands. I don't like saying that because I don't want to disrespect the Republicans, don't want to disrespect the ICM, but they don't have any representation and haven't had any in the legislature for over a decade. You got to fix that, Governor. You got to get in fixed mode now.
While I was begging the legislature to call into session to go in to create a RFP for self-funded health insurance, was going to save us $25 million. While I'm working on a big deal for the South Shore in St. Croix, a hotel's deal for St. Croix, another hotel deal for St. Thomas.
By the way, one of my listeners, Harry Freeman, Harry, I'll give a shout out. He said he told me, are you looking for his ex post facto?
We learned it in high school. I didn't want to get technical. St. Dunstan's
ex post facto.
I was going to put it on my page.
Thank you, Harry Freeman. I like to give a shout out to my audience. So
no.
Don't beat me up on that.
I was going to put it on my Facebook page the day they passed the legislation. Ex post facto. Yeah. It's like, these are basic things.
Yeah. But get back to fixing the relationships, because that's what undermining government right now.
Now you think about it, right? We in the legislature had no problem, because we got the Garvey bond passed in like minutes, and we were able this term we were on a roll, and then this whole thing about the salary thing come up, and all of a sudden people saw the opportunity to make cheap political points of the governor. So while we arguing about, imagine the salary raises that were implemented is less than the study what it paid for to get it in. You got this like clongish. Like while we doing big things and we try and fight Trump and we try and get out $22 million back from education.
And by the way, for the two racetrack them, though the government had owned them property when the hurricanes hit. I understand we had a VIGL issue and I said, but we still had the deed, so that's our money. We got to fight for that, Governor.
Yeah,
we did not hand over the deed to VIGL for that James racetrack at the time. That's why we were eligible for that FEMA money. That's our money. We got to fight for that, Governor.
But these are the things that I'm working on. I don't have time to talk about the salary. I mean, this is past news. Why are we wasting our time on peanuts while literally millions of dollars are waiting for us to execute on? I mean, I don't understand it. But I do understand it, because it's a simple discussion.
It's politics, Governor.
That everybody could participate in. It's a spectacle. People are emotional about it. Nobody wants to talk about TEFRA rebasing for the hospital that influences our Medicaid fund. That's boring, and nobody knows about that.
What about the reciprocal fines now coming from the USVI side and all that stuff?
The reciprocal fines from... We're not, unless
you're not in support of that.
No, we're not. Okay. We're not.
Because we got to defend ourselves, but
we do. But it's not really an attack against us. I mean, you gotta realize. I hate to say it like this, but we're talking about a relatively small economy. I mean, when I went over there, I'd feel bad because I tell them when they first told me, I got so angry. I told them, listen,
BVI.
Yeah. I said, we will reduce all the taxes on marine. The thing is not, this is where the public is missing.
You got hard stuff with you at 9 o'clock, but you can't give me 10 more minutes?
We're going to talk 10 more minutes.
Okay, good.
But this is what the public doesn't realize, and VIPCA doesn't realize. The way to attack the BVI is not to raise the tariff, it's to take all the taxes away from
We'll be back right after that note. Thank you for the 10 minutes, Governor. Be back right after this.
The views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters. views and opinions expressed on Analyze This are entirely those of the on-air participants and do not reflect those of the station's board, management, staff, or underwriters.
So we're back here with the governor. And Governor, you and I know. Good morning once again, Governor. Glad to have you here. You and I know from the very first time you came here, right? I believe our first conversation was actually over the phone. And then you came here and you realized that the setting and the quality of the content was such that 60 minutes would not do my audience, yourself and me, a proper service. So we committed to 90 minutes. Right now, apparently you got important meeting, cause you got big announcements to make and all that stuff.
Big
right?
things.
You know what I'm saying?
Big things, boy.
So you're gonna get excused today, but you know the rules going forward. 90 minutes minimum.
90 minutes.
You can have the whole show and all that stuff if need be, because we got a lot of important issues that we want to talk about. Now, just to crystallize this conversation, you're going to make an attempt to try to fix the politics. Because
I don't know how it fixes, man.
Because this is an 8 furlong race. You're there in the 7th furlong now, 6.5 gone by, and you don't want to walk out, Governor, leaving it like how it is. I don't think you would want that. You shouldn't want that as a governor.
I mean, I got so much
in terms of relationship.
Look at like, man, I love my lieutenant governor, but look how like under the bus, and I have tremendous respect for Tregenza Roach as my lieutenant governor, and I really, really like this dude, genuinely. But his politics, it's a gubernatorial election year, man. I don't
Let me ask this question. You can't speak for him. Have you heard anything? Is he looking at succeeding and being the 10th governor of the Virgin Islands?
He had a committee in the Carnival Village on the opening night, so wearing T-shirts. So I think he's headed in that direction. But I'm not talking about him alone. I'm just talking about everybody in the legislature is a potential governor or lieutenant governor because they have voting records. It's Virgin Islands. I gotta apologize to you right now for them because the next year and a half is going to be crazy because they're attacking me. But soon they will start to attack one another because as those political allegiances line up, and you're going to get, and if you pay attention to what's going on right now, right, there has to be, you have to create, the first rule of politics is be the solution to the problem you create. So people are kicking up about problems, especially on St. Croix, to number one, ensure that we have a strong voter base in St. Croix pushing for a St. Croix governor. Because that's what St. Croix wants. But that's a historical thing, though. It is. I mean, that's the funny thing about it. It's just so. It's like the trains. They run on time. It's like what Obama said. The silly season is about to begin, and you're gonna hear them. The next thing gonna come is about the St. Croix, St. Thomas Riff. Listen, let me tell you something.
Governor, here's the deal. Christiansted v. Fredericksted, native v. naturalized, St. Croix versus St. Thomas. They
never gonna change.
They're like Hatfields and McCoys, Red Sox, Yankees, Celtics, Lakers. It is what it is.
But you know why? Once again, there are no ideological differences in our politics. It's like I'm a very conservative Democrat.
You a blue dog?
Yeah. If you look at me, like we didn't even talk about a 20% increase in salary for the government of the Virgin Islands, which could equate to as much as a $70 million annual burden on the budget. We didn't even talk about that, or the fact that the GRS is now want us to put another 3% towards the government employees pension system, which is another $13 million. And so if we had a Republican Party...
So how do we raise revenue? I know that's the
revenue coming.
That's a discussion on their own. Go back a little bit so you can get the camera because we stream and all that stuff on the wire.
I just got excited and stepped up.
That can happen and analyze this. But we need to really have a serious talk. We have revenue estimating, but we need to really, really get into potential revenue generating areas that we haven't tapped into yet.
The revenue was there, but I think we have to recognize... Number one, we got to let the unions negotiate their own salaries because what we're doing now it's sad because no one in the public, right, is stepping up and saying, well, why is the government minimum wage 70% higher than the private sector minimum wage? 70% higher.
We're a consumer-driven economy, and so we're a combination of tourism and services.
So why didn't the legislature raise the minimum wages for everyone? And the reason why is because
we answered that question a while ago.
The government employees elected the legislature and the governor.
It's politics, governor. It's politics.
And I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like
no. There's the one issue I really want to talk about. Quick, because I know the President Donald Trump. They said they're considering a proposal to create an international shipping registry in the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Yes.
Come to the microphone.
That's what you're talking about. $1 million.
Explain that to the public.
$1 million conversations while we discuss peanuts. So Eric DeWicki, who was introduced to me by none other than Dr. Haldane Davies. We were trying to set up a maritime school in St. Croix, and he came up with this idea that we could, because we're out of the Jones Act, and he had identified this problem.
Exempt from the Jones Act. Yeah.
He had identified a problem before that there are few American flag ships, because in order to be an American flag ship, you have to be built in America, crewed by Americans, and running to American ports. So, and those ships are like 9 times as expensive to ship on as foreign ships. Mm-hmm. That's why the Virgin Islands Hess Oil Agreement was so important, because you could ship oil to any port in the States for like a fraction of the price, transportation-wise.
And that's numerically to back up what you said. The U.S. flag fleet currently numbers around 187 vessels, of which only 80 are involved in international trade. This contrasts with at least 5,500 vessels under China's control, according to industry estimates and assessments from U.S. lawmakers.
So those ships would register in the Virgin Islands and pay that registry, which would create income for the Virgin Islands. But it would also create a lot of ship traffic for us. Not that all those ships would come, but it dovetails with our shipbuilding and repair project that we're working on with Renaissance, the Renaissance property. So we got some big things happening in Renaissance right now.
That property, what billions, and people don't understand how valuable Renaissance is. That Deepwater port down there is arguably one of the most valuable ports in the Caribbean. You know?
Well, it is, and we're. I could say this: the government is moving forward to partner and purchase that property. That's one of the things that I'm working on. We've been offered
so this lasts for a long and a half to take you to December 31st of 2026. You're going to be walking.
Hunter alleyway. What?
Hunter.
I ain't showing them enough.
Use a different term now. A crap. You know, ain't a whip or a hunter. It's a crap. They're blaming the Jackie them for abuse. So be careful with the crap use.
No.
Between now and December 31st.
This abuse, because we have the opportunity I think we have an opportunity to do something big in hotels in St. Croix. I could allude to that. We have an opportunity to do something big again in Frederickstead. We have the opportunity to blow the minds of the free trade zone. In St. Thomas, we get some opportunities.
But we got to fix the energy cost, Governor.
It's coming.
Everything is dependent on the cost of energy, because one of the reasons why the public might say, well, why salary is so expensive and all that stuff. Cost of living in the Virgin Islands requires people be well compensated.
They have
that
to
means
be.
that we got to fix a lot of our underlying problems, our foundational issues to address costs in the Virgin Islands.
My boy. Lower pack butter is $10.50, my boy. Wow. I used to buy it for $1.35. Wow. So the light bill hasn't changed. It hasn't moved. So you could argue, now Carl hates this argument, CEO Knight of the WAPA. I tell him all the time, we actually have reduced the light bill, because if you do plain dollars and cents, the Virgin Islands has had at least 20% inflation in the last, 6 years. So I'm not going to waste time on that argument. I'm going to say we're working and we open up Hogansburg tomorrow. We got a big one in St. Thomas. We already cutting the ground with Chris Loranger via Electron. And then we got a one in Bovoni. We got one Fortuna we building now. Then we got a one in Bovoni. So we getting there. But it's just like COVID. Sometimes you can't see the whole picture. And I tell people, I feel like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. You don't understand the whole picture, and I wish I had the audiences and the genres, thank you for allowing me to do this one, to let people see the whole picture of this big, beautiful economy that we're building. Because tourism's doing good.
Where do you want the Virgin Islands when you are no longer responsible for the Virgin Islands come January 2027?
I want them begging for me to come back. Next year we got $28 million
because you
on
yourself
roads.
said after you won the last time, I's a lame duck now.
Yeah,
you said that.
You know, I behave a lot because I know the lieutenant governor has aspirations, and I don't want to really tarnish his chances to get.
But I would to get in the election period. You should just let them do what they got to do. Because you win twice.
I don't, not with the election, but whatever I do kind of reflects on him because it is a Brian Roach administration. But I like somebody called me a honey badger. You know, you there's some things that need to be said that nobody wants to say. And one of the things is, over the last 6.5 years, guilty as charged, we have done a lot for government employees and retirees. And it has cost the private sector a lot because they're not getting the roads, they're not getting the schools, they're not getting the money in the hospitals, they're not getting their tax checks on time. We would have already been paid up. So somebody has to say and be the adult in the room, like, enough is enough. Let the unions negotiate the contracts, right? We've been paying them. We got them pretty much under control. And let's figure out a way to fund our health insurance so we could save $25 million a year. Let's figure out a way to get the legislature to pass a law that says, hey, EDC companies can't make $30 million.
But you got to sit down with the legislature and rap with them and all we grew up together, Governor. That's the problem.
That's what Ida say. And then
we get these titles and then we go at each other's throats. Look, I am guilty of that behavior myself.
So let me ask you a question. You don't think it's because they lose? They vex like that?
Well, look.
You know Kurt be a little run the legislature, right?
Well, Kurt is a dominant factor. And by the way, he coming on, so I don't want you to know.
No, right? That's okay.
I'm big on reciprocity, big on equity, so he coming on eventually.
He's not my competition.
Are we going to talk? To me, all eyes and minds are leading the territory, so I ain't got time to get into picking sides. We supposed to be sitting. Tito Morales used to tell me, you know that Farrelly and King were best of friends? Even though one caused the other significant pain.
No, you got to look at this situation now, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have anything to lose. I'm out of here.
You're a lame duck, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Mr. VLA, Senator VLA, he got money races to run. So why would I have any animosity?
And he's a dominant player in the legislature. Ain't no doubt about that.
And so I'm glad you said this. So if you want this disruption that you're seeing, he is feeding it. And why aren't we working on the same simple thing? Because you and your feelings. You and your running mate in your feelings, we beat you.
We are not 35 and 40 anymore. Me and he done past 60. You going to be 60 in a couple years. We supposed to be wanting the best
Tell him
for
that.
the territory.
That's all I want. And I don't have anything to fight about. It's like, I headed for the sovereignty.
Generation done.
Pulling away.
Generation done. Not generation
sovereignty.
Generation
no.
Generation done. Look, that's it. You're going to landscape the track, man. Because you got $5 million that you set aside. That's VI money. Yeah. You're going to clean up that James racetrack and fix the surface, like at least for starters. Like I beg you, when you're here in January.
Yes, we're following your plan. Call your good friend Adrian Octolin Williams in here.
That's my ace, man.
She's running some stuff. They're doing soil borings, and we try and get it surface down, and we try and work out some
because I know that my Tomian and Junior and audience don't like to hear it, but I tell you now, from a facility standpoint, the Doc James racetrack, the Mannings Bay racetrack, is a superior facility to the Bavoni racetrack. Not that racing can't take place and good racing can't take place in St. Thomas.
Not as but with potential.
But all things being equal, the big oval, which is now 1 mile in circumference,
right, needs
some attention. I tell you, once that they take off, has racing in the Virgin Islands going to take off as a whole. So I'm begging you, please. You got $5 million of government money. We're going to fight to get that other $7-8 million that belong to us from FEMA because of the damages of Irma and Maria. That's our money. We got to fight for that. Me and Dwayne Henry were talking about that on the table talk last week. And Dwayne said, Neville, we could win the argument because that was the government property when the hurricane hit. So I just let you know, I got people willing to work to let you know that
we
got
happen. The best person on that, one of my favorite people, Adrian Williams Octolin.
The dignitary. You know that when you graduated in 85. right? 85, right? You was at 85.
She's 87.
She graduated 87, right? That year that when she graduated from high school, they had a group of them, or no?
Yeah.
She, Larry Richards, Francis Benjamin, all of these are referred to themselves in Central High School as the dignitaries.
But you know,
Helen Hines, a whole group of them.
But in
so
St.
I feel
Thomas,
like they don't have the wherewithal.
In St. Thomas is John Ingerman, Hugo Hodge,
Yeah.
Joe Basholti, all of them graduated over there. A bunch of them 87.
All of them 87?
Yeah.
Tanya Singh is at 87 total.
Oh, yeah, Tanya is at 87.
Check what I'm saying. But we, seriously, Governor, all jokes aside, right? And I know we're wrapping up the conversation. I want to thank you very much for joining me and giving me the extra time. We need to want for a better United States Virgin Islands and a competitive United States Virgin Islands, and more importantly, a literate U.S. Virgin Islands with some health care.
Speak to your partner now. Let me stop talking
literacy
about salary.
is my peeve on this show. I got a lot of things I talk about, but everybody hear me, they know. I like to read. I'm going to go check my item to make sure they're good. You know what I mean? 'Cause you know when you're old, retina and all kind of things that get impact. Older, right? We need more literacy, more understanding, and the ability to rationalize. 'Cause that's why our irrational behavior and all the things we had over the weekend, over the last week, come from irrational behavior, and we got to fix that, Governor.
I totally agree. I don't know why we fight, and it's like, I was getting along good with the Senate. You know, we need to stop these stupid discussions and really focus on some real, because I need the legislature again to vote on some stuff going on the road for St. Croix specifically. And that's going to be, we got some challenges in terms of making tough decisions, but I am confident we could work together. You know, like I said, I got a year and a half. Hunter alleyway.
A furlong and a half for this mile race that you're doing, and we got to make it work. You kept mentioning, I noticed something to know. You keep talking about unions got to negotiate the contract. I want to do some research on that and get back, delve into that in detail when we talk again. What is it about that you keep bringing back? There's something there that you've noticed when the chief negotiator comes back to you. What is it about that?
Well, it creates. I mean, the last time it took us like 2-3 years to figure out remember when MAP raised it? Mm-hmm. It's a good thing, but it creates so many problems. And then AFT ain't negotiate yet. Police coming back, steel workers coming back. The legislature got a letter from me saying that we owe the steel workers $20 million in retro pay again. We have so many bills to pay. You think that the teachers union can say, "Oh, we just gave everybody adjustment because of the bottom
AFT you're talking about?
Yeah, they're going to say, now the janitor makes as much as a starting teacher. Like, we need to raise all our salaries again. So it just complicates things. Like, I know you want to do good, but there's a lot of ways we could do good in the Virgin Islands. Orderly. I'm
glad that we could end this discussion on a light note. Since you mentioned janitor, I always tell people this, right? In New York City, you ain't got no such thing as a garbage man. The term is a sanitary engineer, right? So we go find a technical term for the janitors. You know what I'm saying? A facility, wherever it is. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody brings something to the table, notwithstanding where they are.
Absolutely.
So we gotta let the public know that. Governor, let me shake your hand, man.
Hey,
Thank you very much for the extra segment, and don't forget to tell my good friend Richie Mota.
1.5
minimum next time. Thank you very much, Governor. Thanks for making this. And Adrian don't text me already, so have fun. Okay? The engineer said to wait 1 minute there. I don't know if they want to take a picture of you and I and all that good stuff. Or we carry the camera, right? Yeah, sit on the go now.